That's a good question. The first computer I ever had myself was a Spectrum 128, and on that, the first game I ever played was Thundercats, which is a really great platform game on the Spectrum. It's really good fun. I played it a lot, but it wasn't the first game I ever played. That's probably like some ancient arcade game. I couldn't tell you for certain which one it would actually be, though. It's likely to be Pac-Man, I think. My all-time favourite game is Civilization, I think. I think it's an all-time classic. I'm talking about the original Civilization. And I think I'm one of the few people that actually still thinks that Civilization 1 looks better than all the later Civilizations, the original Amiga version. So I played the original Amiga version for hours and hours on end. And I used to play it in one sitting, kind of like 7 or 8 hours in one go, all the way through from the very beginning to the very end. Yeah, it was so great. The later ones are really good as well, but I think there's a special place for me. It's got so much depth to it, and so many different sorts of games can come out of that one game. I think it's brilliant. It's a masterpiece. I always loved playing games, and I always loved programming as well. And the two just go together very naturally. So it does tail back to that Spectrum once again, which is a very, very programmable machine. So I used to love kind of writing games in BASIC and stuff on the Spectrum, and that's where I got started. Basically trying to copy the games that I was playing at home. It's probably when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and that's where I got started programming games. I was at university for a while, and immediately after university I went to work for a big games company in England, and that's the only thing I ever did before doing indie games. I worked there for about a year, and then went full-time indie after that. So I've been making indie games ever since. That was 2001. I've been making games for Introversion ever since. Right. Well, our first game was Uplink. So when I was making Uplink, I knew that we were going to have to do like a demo version, and I was trying to figure out what we were going to actually call the demo version of Uplink. And I had this idea that we would call it the intro version, which I thought would be, for some reason I thought this was hysterically funny at the time. And I had this note where I just wrote, yeah, we'll call it the intro version, it'll be totally brilliant. And ultimately that actually became the company name. Introversion Software stems from that.
Way back at uni?
Well, before I made Uplink, I was working on this sort of like really crappy role-playing game construction kit. It was called Shadows, and it was like a sort of Japanese role-playing game construction kit. So you could make your own levels and stuff, and you could design your own characters and write scripts for it. And it never went anywhere. And I was going to give it away basically for free, and I eventually ended up abandoning the whole project in exchange for Uplink. Uplink actually just took over around that point, but it was the first major game that I ever worked on. We were all at university together. So myself and Mark and Tom and Johnny, the original 4 members of Introversion, we were all at university together. We all did a computing degree at Imperial College in London. And we all lived together 1 year as well at university. And while we were at university, I was actually making Uplink at that time. Again, I didn't really have any plan of what to do with Uplink. I was just going to either give it away for free or charge like some kind of like, donate money if you want to type deal. And the other guys at the company, Mark and Tom, were much more sort of business-minded than me. And so they convinced me to try and start a company selling this one game that I'd made. And that's kind of how Introversion got started. So at the moment I'm working on a game called Prison Architect. In Prison Architect you build and manage a maximum security prison. You start with a totally empty plot of land, and you start building the beginnings of a prison and a canteen and a yard, and then prisoners start to arrive, and then you have to start hiring guards, and you gradually build up the security of your prison, and you start dealing with more and more serious issues, until eventually you're managing a massive prison with hundreds of prisoners all running around at once. It's like heavily inspired by Dwarf Fortress and Dungeon Keeper and classics like that. Does DayZ count? I've been playing DayZ really seriously recently. I'm absolutely loving that, you know. But I've played about 70 hours of that so far.
70?
Yeah, it's quite bad when I'm supposed to be working. I'm really hooked on it. That's my game of the moment at the moment for indie. I don't think it's particularly either. I think it's become a genre in its own right now. Definitely, you know, when we started out, it didn't really mean anything to be an indie, and it's, you know, these days it can mean a whole load of different types of companies fall under the heading of indie. It's not enough just to say that you're indie anymore. I don't think. I think there's all kinds of different types of indie. I don't really know what sort of indie Introversion is, but I certainly think we are indie. But I don't know. I don't really think of it in terms of being a blessing or a curse, to be honest. I think it's just another name. Hello, my name is Chris DeLay from Introversion Software, and I am indie.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Well, that looks really stupid.
No, it's not. It'd be great.
Yeah, well, nobody knows what an indie is, do they? Nobody's ever defined it properly. I don't think anybody ever will define what indie actually is.